Hello, architects of life. Welcome to this saga where we'll unearth the secrets behind science's greatest milestones, one by one. Forget cold laboratories and unreachable geniuses. Here, every discovery is a roller coaster of obsession, failure, and the sweet taste of human triumph. And for our first episode, we're going to an unexpected place, the heart of a man who, paradoxically, grew rich from destruction. Imagine Alfred Nobel, a Swedish inventor from the 19th century. He was a brilliant fellow, no doubt, with a mind that simply never stopped. His most famous invention, dynamite, transformed the world in truly amazing ways. Think of mines digging into the depths of the earth, gigantic tunnels piercing mountains, or canals connecting vast oceans and continents. Dynamite made the unthinkable possible. It accelerated engineering and construction at an unprecedented speed, opening up new frontiers. It was a powerful tool designed to build, to open paths, and to advance civilization by leaps and bounds. We could absolutely say that Alfred Nobel was a pioneer, a true visionary who drove immense progress across the globe. But as often happens with great inventions, especially those that unleash such formidable energy, dynamite had a double face, a dark shadow that followed it. What served to build bridges and cities was also tragically used to destroy armies and lives. His creation, originally intended purely for civil engineering, found a brutal and devastating use on the battlefields of war. The very explosions that once blasted rocks for the common good now tore apart human lives with unimaginable cruelty. Alfred Nobel, the builder of roads and future, found himself labeled as the provider of the most destructive weapons of his time. A deep sense of guilt and regret began to gnaw at him. Was this the legacy he truly wished to leave humanity? It was a question that haunted his every waking moment. The spark that changed everything came in 1888, in an almost literary twist of fate. One ordinary morning, while reading the newspaper at breakfast, he opened it and found his own obituary. Yes, his. A French journalist, through a fatal error, had confused Alfred with his brother Ludwig, who had just passed away. The headline was absolutely scathing, and it pierced his soul. It read, Le Marchand de la Mort est mort, which translates to The Merchant of Death is dead. Imagine that scene, the anguish and the profound impact. Alfred Nobel, perhaps sitting with a cup of steaming coffee, reading that the world remembered him not as the genius who facilitated progress, but as a destroyer. He was seen as a vendor of instruments of war, a man whose vast fortune had been built on the misery and suffering of others. That headline was a brutal punch to the gut, a devastating revelation that shook him to his core. He was not a merchant of death. He did not want to be. Absolutely not. But what could a man do, with the immense weight of such a fortune and such an invention, to rewrite his own story? How could he transform a legacy of gunpowder and destruction into a legacy of hope, peace, and progress for humanity? That profound question, that pang of remorse that struck him upon reading his own obituary, was the seed that germinated into one of the most momentous institutions of our time. To truly understand the magnitude of this radical transformation, we must step back a bit and get to know the complex and fascinating man behind the invention of dynamite. Alfred Bernhard Nobel was born in Stockholm, Sweden, in 1833. He was the fourth of 8 children, though sadly, only 4 of them would survive to adulthood. His father, Emmanuel Nobel, was a natural engineer and inventor himself, a man with a brilliant and prolific mind, but often entangled in financial difficulties that led him from prosperity to bankruptcy several times throughout his life. The family eventually moved to St. Petersburg, Russia, when Alfred was quite young. There, Emmanuel made a fortune developing explosive naval mines and torpedoes for the Russian army. Later, he found success with machine tools and construction equipment. Alfred, unlike many of his privileged contemporaries, did not have a formal university education. However, he was a voracious and exceptional self-learner, a true polyglot who fluently spoke Swedish, Russian, French, English, and German. He immersed himself with equal passion in the studies of physics, chemistry, engineering, and notably, literature and philosophy. He was a restless soul, always seeking to improve, always experimenting and pushing the boundaries of knowledge and technology. The Nobel family's interest in explosives was almost a tradition, driven by the military and engineering needs of the era. Alfred's father had been experimenting with nitroglycerin, a dense, oily liquid, incredibly potent, that had been discovered by the Italian chemist Ascanio Sobrero in 1847. Nitroglycerin was a true miracle of concentrated energy, capable of unleashing a tremendous and unprecedented force with a very small amount. It was, in essence, pure energy bottled up. The problem, and it was a gigantic problem that terrified everyone, was that it was as unpredictable and volatile as a wild and furious lion in a glass cage. It exploded with the slightest bump, with a vibration, with a sudden change in temperature, or even for no apparent reason at all, just with the passage of time. Transporting it was essentially suicide. Using it in any context was a game of Russian roulette with very, very unfavorable odds. But Alfred, with his keen vision, saw beyond the immediate danger. He saw how that savage force, if it could only be tamed, could be used to drill gigantic tunnels through mountains, demolish old buildings with precision, and extract valuable minerals from the depths of the earth in a way that black powder, the dominant explosive until then, could never achieve. His personal obsession became finding a safe and controllable way to handle nitroglycerin. It was a relentless race against time and, tragically, against the inherent danger of the material itself. Tragedy after tragedy loomed over his family and his experiments. In 1864, a devastating explosion at his father's factory in Hellenborg, Sweden, claimed the lives of 5 people. Among them was his younger brother, Emil, a promising young chemist. This traumatic event deeply marked Alfred, plunging him into immense grief. But instead of stopping, he redoubled his efforts, driven by a powerful mixture of sorrow, guilt, and an unwavering determination that no one else should die from the uncontrolled power of this liquid. Alfred Nobel continued to experiment tirelessly, often in precarious conditions and always under the ever-present shadow of risk. He sought an inert substance that could absorb nitroglycerin, much like a sponge absorbs water, to stabilize it without reducing its formidable explosive power. He tried sawdust, charcoal, gypsum, clay, and many other materials. There were many failures, many controlled and uncontrolled explosions that endangered his life and those of his collaborators. Until, in 1866, while working in his laboratory in Krumel, Germany, he found the key, Kieselguhr, also known as diatomaceous earth. Imagine Kieselguhr as a kind of very fine, light sand, full of microscopic pores, like a natural sponge. When he mixed it with liquid nitroglycerin, the explosive liquid was absorbed by the pores of the Kieselguhr, transforming it into a malleable, safe-to-handle paste that could then be molded into sticks. Suddenly, nitroglycerin, once untamable and mortally dangerous, became safe to manipulate, transport, and use with a detonator. This truly revolutionary new invention, which he named dynamite from the Greek dynamis, meaning power or force, was patented in 1867. It ignited an industrial and social revolution. For the very first time, a high-power explosive could be controlled with relative safety, allowing for its large-scale use across countless applications. Civil engineering projects accelerated exponentially worldwide. Trains could now cross the majestic Alps through gigantic tunnels, drastically shortening travel and trade routes. Ships could navigate the Panama Canal and, even earlier, the Suez Canal, profoundly transforming global commerce. Entire cities were built faster and more efficiently, with quarries exploited more safely and economically than ever before. Dynamite, sometimes called Nobel's bread due to its stick shape and its crucial role in progress, became synonymous with industrial advancement and development. Alfred Nobel became immensely wealthy, establishing over 90 factories and laboratories in more than 20 countries. He was constantly seeking new improvements and patents, accumulating a truly colossal fortune. But the irony of his success soon became bitterly apparent. Although Nobel always asserted that his invention was intended to be a tool for peace, to facilitate construction, shorten distances, and improve people's lives, human nature quickly found another, far darker use for it. Dynamite, with its incredible destructive power, was eagerly adopted by armies around the world. The same explosions that cleared paths for civilization were now used to devastate trenches, fortifications, and human lives in increasingly bloody armed conflicts. Wars became undeniably more deadly, and dynamite's contribution to that grim reality was undeniable. And then came that fateful obituary of 1888, published by mistake in a French newspaper. The headline "Le Marchand de la Mort est mort," the merchant of death is dead, was not just a simple journalistic error, it was a cruel and devastating mirror that showed Alfred Nobel how, in the public's eyes, he would be forever remembered. It was an image that horrified him to his very core. He was not a man of war, in fact, he abhorred violence. He was a thinker, an inventor, a dreamer with an idealistic vision of progress and betterment. The idea that his vast legacy would be summarized by destruction and death, rather than progress, invention, and the true betterment of humanity, was unbearable to him. This moment was not a sudden epiphany in a vacuum, but rather the culmination of years of internal unease, of a profound moral questioning about the true implications of his life's work. He wanted his life to mean something more, something that transcended the roar of explosions and the cries of war. Alfred Nobel's response to this shattering blow to his soul was as bold and visionary as any of his groundbreaking inventions. In 1895, at his villa in San Remo, Italy, he drafted his last will, a document that would shock his family, his collaborators, and eventually, the entire world. Instead of leaving his vast fortune to his direct relatives, he bequeathed it entirely to the creation of a series of annual prizes. It was an unprecedented decision, an extraordinary act of personal redemption and a profound declaration of faith in human potential and the immense power of knowledge. His will stipulated that a large part of his fortune, more than 90% of his 31 million Swedish kronor at the time, a sum equivalent to hundreds of millions of current dollars, should be invested in secure securities. The interest generated by this enormous capital would then be distributed annually as prizes to those who, during the preceding year, shall have conferred the greatest benefit on mankind. He meticulously established 5 original categories for these prestigious prizes. These were, for the most important discovery or invention in the field of physics, for the most important discovery or improvement in the field of chemistry, for the most important discovery in the domain of physiology or medicine, for the most outstanding literary work in an idealistic direction in literature, and finally, for the person who shall have done the most or the best work for fraternity between nations, for the abolition or reduction of standing armies and for the holding and promotion of peace congresses, the Peace Prize. The choice of these specific categories was certainly not random. They represented the fields that Nobel himself considered fundamental and most promising for the advancement of civilization and human well-being. Science, knowledge, culture, and, of course, peace were at the very core of his vision. His insistence on the greatest benefit to mankind was his eloquent way of redirecting his entire legacy. It was his way of ensuring that his immense fortune, initially obtained from destructive power, would instead be used to fuel constructive ingenuity, creativity, and vital international collaboration. The profound irony of an empire forged in explosives becoming the very foundation for peace, progress, and humanitarian research did not go unnoticed by anyone. Nobel's family was, understandably, furious. Some considered it a betrayal of their inheritance rights, while others simply thought him completely insane. There were years of intense legal battles and disputes, which gravely threatened to overturn his last will. But finally, the executors of his will, led by Ragnar Solman, managed to bravely establish the Nobel Foundation in 1900. The very first prizes were then solemnly awarded in 1901. Since that momentous time, the Nobel Prize has grown to become the most prestigious and widely recognized award in the world, a powerful beacon of excellence that consistently celebrates the best and most inspiring of human ingenuity and compassion. The category of physiology or medicine, in particular, has been absolutely crucial for our series Architects of Life. It has recognized brilliant and passionate minds who have tirelessly unraveled the deep mysteries of the human body, fought diseases that were once unavoidable death sentences, and significantly prolonged and dramatically improved the quality of millions of lives across the globe. From the groundbreaking discovery of insulin for diabetes to the definitive identification of the DNA structure, through the development of vaccines that eradicated terrible plagues and the invention of antibiotics that saved us from deadly infections, each Nobel in medicine is a fundamental and often dramatic piece in the complex puzzle of our collective health and well-being. These are truly incredible stories of persistence, intuition, failure, and ultimate victory that absolutely deserve to be told. Alfred Nobel, the man who was once infamously known as the Merchant of Death, ultimately achieved an unprecedented public and deeply personal redemption. He transformed the lingering stigma of his most famous invention into a global stimulus for creation and benevolence. His enduring legacy reminds us that even from the darkest circumstances and the deepest regrets, the most luminous and transformative ideas can powerfully emerge. The Nobel Prize is not just a recognition of scientific or humanitarian excellence, it is a profound testament to the transformative power of a single vision. It is a poignant reminder that humanity, with all its inherent potential for destruction, possesses an even greater, more powerful capacity for construction, healing, empathy, and unparalleled progress. It is, ultimately, the inspiring story of how a single man, faced with the raw and devastating image of his own mortality and the tragic impact of his actions, decided, in a supreme act of conscience and unwavering will, that his life would not be the resonant echo of an explosion, but rather the harmonious symphony of countless discoveries that would benefit all humanity for generations to come. He was, truly, an architect of life, after all. If you're as fascinated as we are by the hidden stories behind humanity's greatest achievements and the remarkable individuals who shape our world, make sure to subscribe to our channel right now. Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you don't miss our next captivating episode. For more information, visit minrora.com.